and then just to add to everything you were saying there, I want to bring up the name Charles Merriam, who we've addressed on the show before, who was kind of his claim to fame. His big claim to fame was being the advisor to Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And we really live in a Charles Merriam system today, where his entire idea was to create an administrative state where less and less power goes toward the traditional method that we theoretically would learn in civics class. Like, you have your elected representative and who makes the rules, and then the executive branch enforces the rules, and the judicial branch is the one that makes sure that the rules are being followed correctly. Like, all that stuff, Charles Merriam was like, that's like old school nonsense. It's slow. It's not progressive. We need to speed things up where we start to amalgamate all these things into one, and we're going to do it through an administrative state. And what he found out was you can't do that by becoming elected. You can't do that by battling in the system and the way it worked, which I guess is a feature, right? Because that's the system was supposed to work, where you can't just grab all the power. And so the idea was to create this administrative state where you start having these agencies that get more and more power, and then the people inside making the policies, they're not elected. They don't have cycles where they could say, okay, well, in 4 years I might not be working here anymore because the people are going to pick somebody else. So they have this ability to simply just wait out whoever is being elected, and they get their marching orders from somebody who's not elected, right? They get their marching orders from the WEF or the National Governors Association or the International Panel on Municipal City Managers or fucking whatever, right?
This is government by council, essentially. It's actually kind of like the Soviet Union. It's not communism, but Soviet Union actually means a union of councils.
Councils,
It was
yes.
Soviet. This is like a globalist version of that, except not necessarily under communism, more under fascism.
But speaking of that, just to finish this point, the administrative state. So much power has been given over to the administrative state, and the way that they do it is basically Congress passes a law, or your local state legislator passes a law that says, okay, we create this agency. They're going to do X, Y, and Z. They get a $1 billion, and they'll create the rules. And they just kind of step back from there and let the agency create the rules. And what's interesting about this is that the old system, the system as it was designed, is still there. The legislature still has all the power that it had before. The system is entirely set up, and it's still completely functioning the way that it did before. And so the ability for the legislature to actually take back the power from these agencies, or to more rigidly define them, to say, no, okay, agency, you do specifically this, as opposed to saying, let me just make all the rules. EPA, you figure it out. What all the rules are. SEC, you figure it out. FDA, you figure it out. The Congress actually has the ability to say, no, this is specifically what you are going to do, and here are the rules that you are going to follow. And when you make rules, they need to be within this tight narrow definition that we gave. They have the ability to do that.
And this also brings to mind a recent legal ruling that it was quite a while ago, maybe a year ago, but it was a pretty important Supreme Court ruling on the administrative state, and I forgot what exactly it was now. But people said back then that this is going to have ripple effects, and I'll pull it up shortly. The Supreme Court is at war with the administrative state. In 3 major cases decided at the end of the Supreme Court's last term, the court decided against the administrative state, reducing the powers of administrative agencies. Chevron deference to agency interpretations in areas of their expertise was eliminated. So here, this is what Dylan was saying with EPA and all that, right? We can't just establish an agency as Congress and say, you can do things, and then go away, and then they do whatever they want. And as long as Congress looks away, it's technically legal. As long as nobody does anything, right, it's technically kind of illegal because Congress said they can do things. The public rights exception to a target's right to a jury trial in an action brought by an agency was redefined and limited. The statute of limitations to challenge agency rulemaking was extended to permit a new entity to challenge decades-old rules. Collectively, these decisions shift power away from the agencies, and in some cases Congress, transferring that power to the courts. Decades-old precedents were swept aside to shift the balance of power in Washington. The implications of these decisions extend to all federal agencies. And I don't need to go through all the details here. Now, I'm just saying there is a shift underway. Here's Chevron is
A
overruled.
systematic shift, like a non-sexy systematic shift. I think it's important to emphasize that this stuff that we talk about often, it doesn't fit well in a headline. It doesn't necessarily get you excited and make you want to, get engaged in the football nonsense between, oh, I'm team red or I'm team blue. Let's duke it out. It's a little more calmed down. I try to jump up and down to make it exciting, but I understand it's not intuitively exciting. But even though it's not intuitively exciting, this is how the system works. And if you want to affect real change, you have to get it at this level.
And I just want to point, slightly unrelated, but something we mentioned on a recent show, right? Remember how I was saying that the German, and I'm just going to share the article. I'm going to explain what it says.
Yeah.
But how in Germany the government is outright funding anti-opposition protests, and then a couple of days later, there's an article that came out. This is Grannies Against the Right movement, and Munich is colorful. And they're just describing this article here. All these
translate the title.
Yeah, so it says here.
Who's standing behind the mass demonstrations?
What's behind the mass demonstrations in Germany? Because now there's demonstrations in Germany against not just the AfD anymore, but now the CDU also, because CDU is kind of cozying up to the AfD, right? So now there's just anyone who's right of the Greens is bad, and taxpayer money funded organizations are organizing these protests, giving people these signs to walk through the streets. Mostly, I think there's probably mostly, a lot of old people. That's why.
And I wonder how much of this was funded by USAID. Right?
Exactly, right. So that's the question. It doesn't go as far as USAID here, but it talks here about several. Together Against the Right is a network that's currently shilling against the CDU heavily in the social medias. And behind that network is a organization called Campact, and they're saying here a spicy detail. Campact is the main owner of the charity organization Hate Aid LLC, and since 2020 they've been getting federal money from the German government.
Hate Aid, what a name!
Yeah. And look at this. I mean, this is regime-funded anti-opposition propaganda right here. What you're seeing here going on in Germany, amazing.
Which is the same thing that happens here, right? And again, this harkens back to what I was saying, is if that money supply gets stopped, even if it's temporarily, how big of an impact is that going to have on our ability to have elections and to change policy? Like, we're in this golden moment where it's like we need to attack now and get this policy changed as much as we can, because if they've had their fuel basically kinked in the hose, we need to make sure that we really change as much as we can before they're able to get that flow moving again.
Just one more thing, little tidbit I wanted to share, because I just asked Venice AI about this. So I asked it, what types of government fund anti-opposition protests? Right, this is Facebook's language model here, Llama, that's currently configured to be used. Based on the search results, it appears that governments with authoritarian or repressive tendencies are more likely to fund anti-opposition protests. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, just you can ask all the language models. I've asked several of them. They're all going to tell you the governments that fund anti-opposition protests are repressive authoritarian governments. And that's what's been going on in Germany. That's what's been going on in the US, probably to some large extent, with USAID. So those are the people who lecture us about democracy and how democracy is in danger and how they represent democracy.
Everyone, please like, comment, and subscribe to help us grow this channel. I think we cover a lot of good stuff. We're covering ideas that you're not hearing anywhere else. Economic ideas, historical ideas, systematic politics ideas you're not hearing anywhere else.